Hi, sweet people. It's Gesine Prado. I'm in the Food Network kitchen, so you can see all the hubbub around me. It smells so stinking good in here. And I'm making chocolate chip cookies. I'm going to get whatever they're cooking after this. So you've probably seen me on Baked in Vermont, Sundays at 12:30 Eastern Time. Check your local listings, best show ever. But today I'm making some chocolate chip cookies that are my favorite chocolate chip cookie recipes. It was on our last episode, so look it up. My friends from high school came. I never go to high school reunions, so I have people come to me. It's too much pressure. So, and I get to wear an apron when I'm at home, so I can hide any of the bits I'm ashamed of. It's fabulous. So this recipe is special for a few reasons. First, I'm going to show you how I do the dry ingredients because I want them all mixed together. And you're probably used to like what's in a chocolate chip cookie. But I have flour, right? Of course there's flour. So that's 2.5 cups plus 2 tablespoons of flour in here. And then I add 2 tablespoons of cornstarch just to break up all that gluten in the flour just a little, because I use a relatively high gluten flour. It's all purpose. And then that cornstarch just breaks it up a little, makes them a little more tender. And then I add 2 teaspoons of salt. I like sweet and salty, especially when it's in a chocolate chip cookie or caramel, anything chocolate oriented. I am more salt forward. If you just want to add a teaspoon of salt, totally cool with me. Personally, I love the salt. And then I'm going to add both baking soda and baking powder. All this is sounding totally normal. I know. It is. Maybe not the cornstarch, but then, drum roll, I'm going to add grated unsweetened chocolate. This is 3 ounces. And you usually get unsweetened chocolate in the bar, right? And you're like, how do I grate it? Because you don't want bloody knuckles. Blech. So what I do is I put it in the freezer. And then once it's relatively frozen, I grate it with a cheese grater. Clean your grater first of any cheese. Pro tip. Unless you really like Parmesan or something in your chocolate chip cookies, I do not judge. That is okay. And now I'm going to whisk this all together. And I usually whisk my dry ingredients, if it has leavening in it, for about 30 seconds. Just to make sure that it's evenly distributed. You don't have to sift the flour unless it's something like a cake flour that tends to be very clumpy. You really don't have to sieve your flour, but you do have to whisk it so that you distribute the leavening. So that's all done. It's waiting for us. Special ingredient, unsweetened chocolate. If you have any questions, ask. I am here for you. I have a question. Ask away.
Gabriella wants to know, do you crack your eggs on the counter or on the side of a bowl?
Gabriella wants to know if I crack my eggs on the side of a bowl or on the counter. I think you know the answer to this question. I have this feeling. You never do it on the corner of a bowl. And the reason is because I call them the little cooties. Any kind of critters that are going to get you sick actually live on the shell. They don't live inside the egg. So if you crack it on the corner, you're going to force the shell inside the egg, contaminating the egg itself. The other thing is if you're separating the eggs, you are very likely to actually puncture the yolk. And if you want to keep the yolk separate from the whites, you're going to have scrambled eggs for dinner because you're not going to have a great white that's completely uncontaminated from the yolk. So always on a counter, make sure it's clean. Oh, as I spit on you, sorry. And so to this I'm going to add granulated sugar. All of it, 1 cup and 1.5 cups brown sugar. Now, if you like your cookies a little more flat and crispy, you can actually adjust this ratio to doing 1.5 cups of granulated sugar and 1 cup of brown sugar. The reason I like the brown sugar being a larger ratio is because I like chewier cookies, and the molasses in the cookie actually gives you that. And the acid in the molasses is what makes the baking soda go, go, go. So you need a little bit of acid in there, so I always make sure that I have brown sugar in there. And my other secret ingredient is browned butter. It smells good. It tastes good. It is magical. And what you do is you melt butter. This is 3 sticks of unsalted butter. And you melt it until you see the little brown bits on the bottom. But you will smell it first. It smells so good. Nutty, caramelly goodness. And it imparts all that wonderful flavor to the actual cookie. So I add it melted, which is usually a no-no in baked goods, But for cookies, I actually put the brown bits in too because it's so tasty. For a cookie like this, it's okay because I'm not actually looking for a very aerated batter, right? My cookie dough, it's going to be relatively hearty. And I don't want it to be this light and fluffy thing. I like my cookies chewy. So if you prefer, you could actually let this get to room temperature and solidify a bit, but I don't think you need to. I think the cookies are delicious either way. So I'm going to get this going a little faster because I do want it combined a little more. And in doing this with the warm butter, you start melting the sugar a little bit. Oh, I have another question, and I want to answer it. Ask away.
Shannon wants to know when a recipe calls for melted butter, do you let that butter cool before you use it?
So Shannon wants to know if a recipe asks for melted butter, do you usually let it cool? In most cases, you do, and you should actually read the recipe thoroughly to figure out what they mean for you to do. In this recipe, you can let it cool and solidify, like a traditional cookie when you would add butter. But if you're doing something like a genoise, where you add the butter later, you have to add it to a very thin batter, so the butter actually has to be still liquidy, but cool. So it's that little dance you're doing just to make sure that it hasn't gotten so cool that it's solidified. But in most cases, yes, you do want your butter to be cool. In this case, it doesn't need to be, so you can have cookies faster. Haha. It also starts melting the sugar a little, and it creates this really cool, almost like how brownies have that little shiny little niblets on top. This like makes it shiny and crackly on top, which I love. But you know, if you forget, you let your beurre noisette get a little cool, totally fine either way. It'll be delicious. And then 2 eggs to our lovely sugar butter mixture. And if you let this keep going, it could get light and fluffy. It just needs to cool a little. But we don't need that. These are chocolate chip cookies.